Okay, so bear with me as uh, I am testing a new light setup for now until I can get a light, which I've put off for too long. Um, but I finished watching the Iron Lung movie about three, a little over 3 hours ago. Uh, I like giving myself a little time after watching the movies to give my consensus of how they actually are. Sorry if I'm caressing you. But Iron Lung, just to give a quick verdict to start this off, I think is a very good movie. I think it is a good example of the psychological horror genre and how to do that in a correct way. And also the fact that Mark was able to do this uh, with a $3 million budget made a great movie with a very small budget. So big props on that. Also big props to him on just the movie doing so well right now in theaters. Already made back its money in ticket sales. But overall, I think it was a very good movie. There are there are some aspects to it that could have been better. But I think overall, for this being his first movie and this being something that is he worked hard on, you can tell that this was a passion project and a lot of heart was put into it by both himself and the rest of the crew. Um, I'm gonna keep this non-spoiler related. Uh, just give you basic thoughts of how I felt about the movie. Because I do think it's worth the watch. I do definitely think it is worth the watch. It might not be for everyone, but I think it is definitely worth it to watch at least once. And if you do end up liking it, like I did, you will probably want to watch it again because I do want to watch it again. There's the story that it tells is very interesting and it leaves you with enough questions that I do think you can have answered through a second watch. Where I know a lot of people won't like that, but I do think through the basic runtime of the movie, you are given enough to understand the world and what it's building and understand the dangers that lies ahead as the movie progresses. I think it does a very good job of building that suspense that you're not quite sure what's going to happen next and what the true danger might mean because I guess minor spoiler, this really isn't a spoiler. The movie shows off the monster very early, which I know is something I harp on that you shouldn't do in movies, that you should save the monster till the very end. But in this case, I think it works out to the best because you might see the monster, but you don't truly grasp what the fear of the monster actually is. Like, there's a lot to discover as you watch through this movie. And just to talk about it, beautifully shot, gorgeous. The movie looks great throughout. And also, big props. I think that, to my knowledge, this was done 100% with physical props. Like everything was handcrafted. The blood, 100% real. I know from all the stuff that he talked about, all the blood you see in that movie, that real blood. They used real blood to make that movie. So it visually is very good. And for a movie that takes place entirely within one space, I think it manages to make the most out of that space. And as somebody who's aware of the game existing, it is very true to what the game actually is, to the gameplay, to the story plot, to how it plays out. It is basically a one for one recreation of the game. So, as a video game adaptation, I think this is one of the best video game adaptations to be out there because it is literally a one-to-one recreation of the game itself. Like from first initial release to final update, it highlights all of it. So that in itself is amazing to see. But again, just back on the visuals, there's just like that ship feels lived in as you're going through it. Like you know that the Iron Lung itself is something that it feels like a real thing that could exist in real life. All the mechanisms that are in it feel real and are again one-to-one recreations of what exists in the game. And just on top of that too, another good thing, the acting was great. Like if above all else, this movie shows that Mark can act because his acting was phenomenal in this movie. Not always perfect, but it was phenomenal. The emotion that he shows in this, the fear, the sadness, everything that is shown throughout this movie, it feels genuine. And I think this is a true testament to his acting capabilities. And of course, the rest of the acting crew, great. I don't know how he got Troy Baker on there, but awesome that he did. Just great additions to the cast. I think acting wise, very great. Everybody did a great job in this movie. Now, to get a little critical, I do think the pacing of the movie at the start is a little slow. It is a little jarring, and I was concerned at the start of the movie as to what the pacing would be throughout. But towards, I'd say, I'm trying to describe it without spoilers, but basically after the major dialogue, there's a big piece of major dialogue that happens, kind of explaining what the movie central MacGuffin is going to be about. And following that part, it is, would say it stays incredibly engaging throughout. That the pacing picks up and there's constantly something happening that will keep you interested in what's going on. Which, again, considering what the movie is about, the psychological horror aspect, I think it does a great job because the majority of the time, he is alone in the Iron Lung with no other dialogue other than himself. Like it's just Mark in the ship. And like I think that's just a great take because I know a lot of other movies would not have gone that route because you have to have some sort of dialogue going on. Of course, that's the majority of what makes a movie good. And the fact that Mark is by himself in most of these scenes during this portion of the movie and is still able to have some sort of dialogue because there are secrets in the ship that enact some sort of dialogue either within his own head or with some other aspect of the environment, like through audio files or something of the sort, memories. Like there's always something going on. And I think I think it stays incredibly engaging throughout. That I felt truly engrossed in the story that it was telling, and I was constantly waiting for the next moment to come up. But like I said, though, it does start very slow. It is a very slow start. The initial hook is slow. I will say that it is a slow hook, but if you do grab on, it is good after that. And then just going back to the visuals, I know I said it was visually very good. This is kind of a visual and audio thing that there is a lot of the time that visually you can't really tell what's going on, especially towards the end, that it becomes a little disjointed. And audio wise, I know this is probably specifically done because the psychological horror aspect of it. But towards the start of the movie, when there's dialogue being explained about the universe or the world that they are in, there is some audio issues that come up that you can't really hear what they're saying, which I think would probably have kept the first part of the movie more engaging if you were able to fully hear the dialogue that was going on. Though, again, I understand why that directive choice was made to make that dialogue harder to hear, because essentially, psychological horror aspect, we're not supposed to know what's going on there. But I think if we were able to hear more of that, we probably, I think more people would probably stay engaged, and I think that would be a benefit to the movie. And I just think, despite all of that, though, I do think it was like very good. It wasn't like groundbreaking though. Like if you were expecting like the next messiah of movies, this isn't that. Like if I could compare it to a movie that a horror movie in that genre, like Sinners came out earlier this year or early last year and was a phenomenal movie, groundbreaking. I don't think it lives up to that specifically, but it does tell a very compelling story. Because I think the difference between between a movie like Sinners and a movie like Iron Lung is Sinners does delve into aspects of like the real world that make you think about it, whereas Iron Lung specifically delves into aspects of this specific created world, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think a lot of people look over a good movie that just or good stories that just tell you about the universe itself that it is being told in. I think that is, just to go on a little bit of a tangent, I think that's a detriment to the way that people view media now, is you can't just tell a good story anymore. You have to have it connect to something else in some way, shape, or form, which I don't think is always necessary. And I think in this case, it was definitely not necessary. I think the world that is built within the Iron Lung movie is incredibly engaging, and while it does leave you with some questions, I think there's enough for you as an audience member to infer what the answers to those questions could be based on the context clues of the movie. Again, not perfect, but I think it was a good, solid movie. A little bit of a shorter review, but I'm just going to give it a numerical value. I would have to probably say it is either a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I would lean more towards 8, if anything, because I personally found it incredibly engaging. And also, given the fact that it is a 1-to-1 recreation of the Iron Lung game, I feel like that personally resonates with me a lot more. It is groundbreaking in the fact that, for one, this is an entirely unique project. Like, I think there are very few movies that tell the kind of story that is being told in Iron Lung and do it successfully. And I'd say Iron Lung does tell that psychological horror, stuck in a cramped space story very well. I'm gonna give it an 8. You know what? F it. I'm giving it an 8 because just thinking about what the movie means and the lore that it built within just that movie alone. Like, I don't know much about the game itself. I watched Mark's 2 playthroughs of it with the initial release and the update release, and I couldn't tell you what the lore is. But I think the movie does delve into some of those aspects of what the lore implies, that it makes it an interesting watch. And Along with that, beautifully shot. The dialogue engaging. I have to give it an 8. I have to give it an 8 out of 10. It might be a loose 8 out of 10, but it is still an 8 out of 10. I think it is very good. But anyway, that'll be it from me for today. I definitely would suggest watching this one. It is a very good movie. Plus, you're supporting a smaller director now, an upcoming director who I think proved through this movie that he is capable of expanding and growing his passion projects of making films and stuff like this into something even more grand than what he has been doing in the past. This is I think Mark's stepping stone towards furthering his career, which is crazy to think because he's already a huge celebrity. So we'll see where he goes from here. I think this is a good step in the right direction. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.